Question 9 on this assignment is getting at this idea that our samples are going to be close to the true population parameter. They're not going to be exactly the same value, but they'll be close enough that we can make assumptions about the population based on our sample. And so you see in the graphic that they're constantly taking these simple random samples of 1015 and getting different p hats, different sample proportions. So the first one was 0.509, the next one was 0.525, then 0.479. If you look at the right, you see a histogram our visual display here of all of the possible samples. So you notice that the samples are surrounding zero point 0.5. They go down to about 0.46 and up to about 0.54. And that's ultimately where our margin of error is coming from. So if you look at this Gallup poll and they saw how important is it that children get vaccinated, 54% said extremely important. So what does that sample tell us about the population? Well, we don't know that the population is 54%, but we do know that the population is probably pretty close. So here, based on the fact that we got 54, we're pretty sure that more than 50% agreed with that statement because 54% was far enough to be fully above 50%. Because remember, your samples are all going to vary a little bit from the true population parameter, but they should be pretty close. And so you can see here that if the population was 50%, then it is pretty unlikely that we would get something less than 54%. And so what that tells us is that 54% that we got is good evidence that at least 50% of the population agree with that statement. And I know that's a big concept for us to understand, but looking at that histogram, we see that if we were centered at 50%, then it's pretty rare to get anything greater than 54%. So we feel pretty good that this is, that our estimate came from a population parameter that was something bigger than 50%. Now, on the flip side, 42%, that doesn't happen very often. And this, here we see that it did not happen at all. There's nothing between 0.40 and 0.45 in our graphic. And so with that 42% sample statistic, here it seems really unlikely that we would be from a distribution of 50%. Because a sample should not be that far away from 50% for us to claim that the majority of parents feel this way. So again, I know that was pretty, kind of a very highly theoretical thing to talk about. But if your sample gave you a population of, or gave you 54% for a sample, it's not surprising. Okay, that's not particularly unlikely based on this histogram. It is certainly within the reasonable range of values that we see there. Whereas 42% was not within those reasonable ranges of values for that particular parameter value. And so that was an unlikely proportion based on that histogram.